has been sorted out. Is that correct?
Yes, the Deputy President has the documents that are going to be referred to, and he's had a look at them, so we can proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Ramaphosa, you're still under oath. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Deputy President, we are still at page 392 of the quadruple J 8. Have you got the page? Thank you very much. Now, I just want to first look at the specific remit of the Transformation Committee, of which you were the chairperson. It is mentioned under the heading, the Transformation Committee. And it says the committee was created voluntarily by the board in January 2011, but I think it's common cause that it was actually in November 2010. Yes. To help it oversee the significant risks that the company faces in the crucial area of transformation. And then it says, while this term is not commonplace in the UK, in South Africa it refers to the overarching aims of the entire process of black economic empowerment and changing how business is done. And then it says, in our case, we have committed to certain outcomes through the SLPs to which our new order mineral rights are subject to, and to a series of initiatives outlined at the 2013 AGM. Now, apparently your microphone is off. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I just want to concentrate on the second element of transformation, which is the commitments contained in our SLPs. Now, you mentioned in your evidence in chief that part of your responsibility was looking at issues related to housing. Now, the SLPs are the primary instrument by which a mine is measured in relation to compliance with housing commitments. Do you accept that?
Yes.
Yes. Now, one of the things that you do, if you look under the heading under paragraph 7.1 of this document, particularly the second bullet point, is monitoring, reviewing, and evaluating progress in relation to what the company has done.
Yes.
You accept that? Yes. Now, and if you look at the bottom of the page, it's got the shaded area there, implementation, strategy, governance, regulatory, and reporting. Can you see that?
Yes.
And the first bullet point speaks specifically about reviewing progress against the objectives of the SLPs. And then the last bullet point speaks about the issue of industrial relations. And under strategy, the first bullet point and the last item there is housing and living conditions. Can you see that?
I do.
Yes. Thank you. Now, I want to suggest to you that the issue of housing, which you mentioned in your statement in 2011 as being one of the major causes of industrial unrest, was at the heart of the mandate of the Transformation Committee.
Yes.
Yes. Now, the way in which you discharged that mandate was monitoring, evaluating, and reviewing progress made by management in that area.
Yes.
Yes. Now, you were the chair from November 2010, so you would have received the social and labor plans of 2011 and 2012.
Yes.
Yes. And obviously, knowing certainly from the newspaper accounts and television accounts, knowing the person that you are, you wouldn't have just rubber stamped them. You would have studied them and, if satisfied, approved them.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I want to start with the social and labor plan of 2010, which we've now accepted, served before your committee. Now, this is at 236, but the specific page I want to refer to is 272 to 273. Have you got that, Mr. Deputy President?
You said 270.
272 specifically, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, item 13 talks about housing and living conditions. And if you then forget about the first paragraph under item 13 and you look under the sub-paragraph, progress review, what it says here, the financial situation of the company was unfavorably impacted by the global economic crisis and the falling prices of platinum. A decision was therefore taken to review the housing and hostel upgrade program. Lonmin thus invested in the development of a human settlement strategy intended to address housing and living conditions challenges. The primary objective of the strategy is to facilitate decent, affordable accommodation for our employees, to contribute towards eradication of informal settlement, and to create a competitive edge for our business. And then you talk about how that strategy is going to be implemented going forward. But the next paragraph says, in view of the impact of the global economic crisis and the consequent financial position of the company, the target of building 5,500 houses and converting 124 hostel blocks into family units by 2011 will not be achieved.
Yes.
The conversion of the 124 hostel blocks will, however, be achieved by 2014.
Yes.
Now, we've already established that you reviewed, monitored, evaluated this SLP at the Transformation Committee. Why was the target of building 5,500 houses by Lonmin not met by 2011?
I think as clearly articulated in the report, the target as reported to the Transformation Committee could not be met because of lack of the necessary resources, which
Yes.
is the financial resources in view of the global negative impact that the company was subjected to.
Yes.
They had hoped, as clearly stated here, to have built 5,500 affordable houses, and they were now saying that that target will not be achieved.
Yes. And the reference here to global economic crisis refers to the crisis of 2008-2009, correct?
Indeed.
Yes. Now, the target of building 5,500 houses was a 5-year target, correct?
Yes,
And it was made in 2006.
yes.
And from what was reported to you when this was abandoned, what were the reasons why Lonmin did not build the houses between 2006 to 2008?
It is largely because of the financial resources that needed to be put in place. But I do think that one needs to look at it in broader context, because it is also dealt with here in one of the reports, that in order to achieve these targets, you also needed to work with other parties. Local government, for instance, needed to also release land. The land had to be serviced. But in the end, you also needed to have an uptake. You might see in the report somewhere that of some of the houses that were built and had to be sold, the uptake from workers was very minimal.
Yes.
And so this project, this type of a project, faced a number of challenges, and may I say there were quite a number of constraints. Financial resources was one of them.
Okay. Now, let's go back to, perhaps before we do that, let me ask you this question. Were you satisfied that the explanation that was given to you by management was an accurate and honest explanation about why these houses could not be built?
I had no reason to doubt the truthfulness of what they were saying.
Yes. In fact, you wouldn't have signed off on this change of strategy if you were not satisfied.
I had no reason to doubt.
Yes. Now, let's go back to 2006 so that we can evaluate whether you should have been satisfied with the explanation by management. Can I take you to pages 75?
I'm sorry to interrupt, my learned friend, but Mr. Ramaphosa only acceded to the board, as we've made clear, in 2010. So to the extent he wishes to explore what could or could not have been done by this witness in 2006, it's really irrelevant for this witness.
Yes. No, that's definitely not the intention.
What do you say about that, Dick?
No, it's not the intention to ask this witness what he should have done in 2006. The only intention is to ask him whether he should have been satisfied with the explanation given to him by management in 2010, why the project had to be abandoned. I am not going to say to this witness.
You know, I understand that it may be relevant to some of the other witnesses who were around at the time to raise this kind of question, but I don't think this witness can be asked that. But anyway, you say you're not going to go there.
No, I'm not. I'm simply going to illustrate to the witness the historical account and then to go back to where I started, whether he should have been satisfied if he had done the interrogation that he says he did. Mr. Deputy President, let me take you back to 2006. I'm simply not going to ask you to answer if you feel like you are not competent enough. I mean, competent in the most generous sense. Competent enough to answer the question.
But do I understand you're going to put documents to him?
Yes.
From 2006?
Yes, for 2006, 2007, and 2008.
Yes, then I take it you're going to ask him whether he read the document?
Yes.
And then take it from there?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr.
It mightn't be helpful to ask him first if he read the documents, because if he didn't, then it will save quite a lot of time.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, again, I don't mean to constrain my learned friend, but isn't the simple thing to point to what was happening in 2010 as to the reasons that were then relevant, because those are the only ones the witness can address? Going through a historical trawl as to what was happening in 2006 may be of historical interest, but nothing that could have been done or said about those matters by this witness.
Mr. Chairman, this historical trawl...
I understand the thrust of the question to be the witness's knowledge in 2010 about things that had happened earlier and whether that knowledge would have induced him to act in a particular way in 2010. I think,
yes.
Am I understanding?
Indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. But I think Mr. Winters is effectively underlining that the fact that you can deal with this in a fairly focused way without taking too much time.
Yes, the historical trawl is literally going to take half a minute. Mr. Deputy President, I want to start by the 2006 report, and specifically page 76, and the table there under table 42. Are you at that table, Mr. Deputy President?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Now, the plan was originally conceived in 2006, culminating in 2011, and which is where you've got a total of 5,500.
Yes.
The target for 2010 was 1,200. Can you see that?
Yes.
And the target for 2011 was 1,100. It says number of houses to be built.
Yes, I see.
And then 2009, 1,200, 2008, 1,300, 2007, 700. Now, I want to take you then just to note those were the targets and those were the figures. Now, I want to put it to you that it is common, well, maybe not common cause. Out of this target set in 2006 to build 5,500 houses, only 3 houses were actually built.
Did you know that, Mr. Ramaphosa?
No, I did not know that.
Yes. Well, at the time you sat at the Transformation Committee in 2010, and it was said to you by management that we've got a land problem, we've got an uptake problem, and we've got a financial resources problem. We must abandon the whole project. Are you saying they didn't tell you that out of the target of 5,500, we've only built 3?
No.
Now, did you ask them how many have you built before you come with all these excuses why you cannot build them?
Well, I received the report as set out in various documents. A report, if I had the time to look into more closely, would show that a number of hostel blocks were converted into single and family accommodation, and that a number of houses were built, and that they were seeking to get a number of workers to take up those houses, and somewhere in one of the reports they then set out that only so many workers took up the houses. I must say that I never had sight of a report that said only 3 houses have been built.
Well, I can show you the report. It's in the 2009 SLP, which is page 218A to 218C. Why is it not in his bundle?
An annual report to 2009
Yes.
on the social and labour plan, the
Yes.
Western Platinum.
Yes.
You, of course, as you've told us, only joined the board in second half of 2010.
Indeed.
Did you see this report? Was it shown?
No, I don't remember seeing this report. But I also see that it refers to Western Platinum Limited.
Yes, well,
And one would have wanted to see the more globular report.
well, at page 218, that's how we got to Western Platinum, because
Yeah.
at page 218, which is the Eastern Platinum, it tells us that the commitments for housing and hostel are reflected under the Western Platinum report. So there are no specific reports for Eastern Platinum, so you must go to Western Platinum to know what the status is.
Yes.
And when you go to Western Platinum, which is 218A, you see there that the target for 2009, according to Lonmin, is 3 houses. And then the actual is 3 houses, and the attainment is 100% against the target of 3%.
Yeah.
The 3.
I mean, of 3 houses.
Of 3, yes.
3 out of 3 is 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But as I pointed out to you, can you see that, Mr. Deputy President?
I see it. This is certainly not the report that I had sight of.
Yes. And as I pointed out to you, the target, actual target for 2009, according to the page 76, was actually 1,200.
Yes, quite.
So to then present a report in 2009 as though the target was 3 houses is inaccurate.
Yes.
And these are the things I'm asking about when I say in 2010, when the company comes before you and says, Mr. Chairman, we want to abandon the aim of building 5,500 houses. We've got very good reasons. When I say, did you interrogate these reasons? And you say you did. I want to understand how it came about that these questions didn't arise. And if they arose, what explanations were given to you?
Well, the explanations that were given were the economic situation and the economics, global economic slump down. I will say with honesty that I did not have sight of this report. If this is the report that reflects the activity or the progress that Lonmin is meant to have made.
Yes. All right. Now, let us look at the explanation given about the financial situation of Lonmin. I asked earlier whether the financial situation relates to the global economic problems of 2008 and 2009, and your answer was yes. You remember that?
Yes.
And clearly it would not relate to the period between 2006 to 2008. Do you accept that?
Yes.
All right. Now, if I can refer you to a copy of the annual report that I've extracted, which is at page 342. Have you got that, Mr. Deputy President?
I do.
Thank you very much. Now, there are 4 tables there at the bottom of the page, and the table on the bottom left is revenue.
Yes.
Now, it is telling us what the revenue position of Lonmin has been since 2005 to 2009. The relevant years, of course, is 2006. And you see that between 2006 and 2007, the revenue actually increased from $1.8 billion US to $1.9 billion US.
Yes.
And then from 2007 to 2008, the revenue increased from $1.9 billion US to $2.2 billion US.
Yes.
So those years, one cannot I'm sure you would agree with me. One cannot use the financial constraints as an excuse. These were the good years for loanmen. Do you accept that?
Well, certainly from a revenue point of view,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Now
From
we
a
see
revenue
there
point
is
of
a,
view.
yeah, we see there is a slump from 2009, from 2008 to 2009, from 2.2 billion US dollars to 1.1 billion US dollars.
Yes.
Yes. Now I want to refer you to what happens after that. And now between 2009 and 2010, and that's the period where you come onto the scene. Can I take you to page 349?
Yes.
Now, it says here under 2010 features, it's got the bullet points there. The revenue is 1.6 billion US dollars. Can you see that?
Yes, I see.
Yes. Now you see that there has been again an increase from 1.1 billion to 1.6 billion.
Yes.
Yes. Now if I then take you to what happens after. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's revenue, but isn't it relevant to look at earnings before interest and tax?
Yes, I'll come.
I'm not saying you can't ask a question about revenue, but I'm saying for the sake of completeness, you've got to look at the EBIT as well, haven't you?
Yes, I will look at that as well. But I want to finish the topic on revenue. In the 2011, a report which we see at page 360, have you got it, Mr. Deputy President?
Yes, I do.
We see the revenue again goes up to 2 billion, which is the same as it was in 2008. Well, not the same, but 200 million less. But it's 2 billion.
But compare the EBIT in 2008 with the EBIT in 2010.
Yes.
2011, that's earnings before interest and tax.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if we are going to do that at page 360, because it is the...
Well, as long as you're going to go there,
Yes.
I won't stop you.
Yes. Can you see there that there has been an increase in the revenue from 1.6 to 2 billion US dollars?
Indeed.
Yes. Now let's go then to the question that the chairman has been asking me. The underlying EBIT, and that's at page 360, and that's where there is a comparison between 2007 up to 2011. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see that.
Now we see that between 2008 and 2009 there is actually a negative. You see that?
Yes.
Thereafter it picks up again up between 2009 and 2010. Can you see that?
Yes.
And then it again increases to 311 million US dollars.
Yes.
So the point I'm trying to make is that both from a revenue point of view and from a point of view of the EBIT, we see there is a remarkable change between 2009 and 2011.
Indeed.
Now, the financial excuse that is given why this program must be abandoned really is only applicable in relation to 1 year, which is 2008 to 2009.
I can see that you're referring to the revenue and now also to the earnings before interest and tax.
Yes.
But I also think that the critical question that needs to be addressed is what those earnings were used for.
Yes.
And I think we will need to look at that. But in the same vein, I hope you do take us to page 362,
Yes.
where there is a report about housing, which sets out that so many hostel blocks were converted and so many houses were built.
Yes, I will deal with that.
Will you deal with
Yes,
that?
I will. I will
Okay.
deal with it. But I am simply exploring the explanation that was given to you
Yes.
of financial constraints. I am proposing to you that those financial constraints in reality are only applicable to 1 year and not to the entire 5 years.
That may well be so, but when one looks at the financial architecture of a company, one needs to look at it in totality, and it's not only limited to 1 year. One needs to look at a number of years and what the use of the earnings that were earned were put to. And some of them could have been put to capital expenditure and so forth.
Yes. Now, well, maybe you can help us here about exactly what the use of these earnings was. Let us talk about the period where there was actually a loss, as we have seen on the earnings before interest and tax between 2008 and 2009. Did Shanduka, was Shanduka paid any dividends for that period?
No.
Which period?
For 2008 to 2009.
When did Shanduka invest in the company?
It was in 2010.
Sorry,
I thought they invested in 2010.
I mean,
so how could they have earned anything
No,
from the company 2009 and
Yes,
10?
sorry, sorry,
8,
Mr.
9, I mean, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. It's my mistake. I'm actually looking at the later period. When was Shanduka first paid dividends?
To my recollection, Chanduka has not received any dividends.
Yes, all right. Now, I understand that Shanduka actually receives about 250,000 rands a month in relation to advice given on empowerment.
Yes.
Yes. And that has not been limited in any way by the financial constraints of Lonmin.
Yes.
All right. Now, Mr. Deputy President, you wanted me to refer to what Lonmin has actually done in the area of housing.
I was merely saying that will we deal with that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, I can tell you in relation to hostels that we have seen that the target was 124 to be built over a period of, to be converted over a period of 5 years.
Indeed.
Now, according to the SLP, I think it's the 2010 SLP. In fact, I should probably refer to it so that I am fair to you.
Page is that?
Mr. Chairman, this is actually 318. It is the 2011 SLP. Have you got it, Mr. Deputy President?
I do have it.
Thank you. Now, this is now the end of the 5-year period that Lonmin had undertaken in 2006. What they say under Table 18, Housing and Hostel Conversion Performance for Marikana. Category, number of houses to be built, 2011, target 0. Variance 0, attained 0. And then they speak about hostels, target 26, actual 26, variance 0, attained 100%. Now, I want to, if you look at action plans going forward, they talk about 100 million being budgeted for conversion of 26 hostel blocks in the financial year of 2012. Then they say the planned conversion for the remaining 68 blocks will be completed by 2014. So if you look at this versus the target of 124, you see that actually Lonmin has only converted about 50% of the hostels that they said they would convert. And there is still 68 outstanding by 2011, which is the end of the 5-year period.
Yes.
I wouldn't necessarily characterize this as a success, would you?
Well, I would characterize this as work in progress.
I heard someone say you're lying. People are allowed into the chamber to hear the evidence, to listen to it, so while we listen to it as well. They're not here to make comments or interjections. And if that happens again, I'll ask if the person concerned leaves the chamber. We are here to hear the evidence of the witness without interruption, without comment, and it's something that I will not tolerate. I hope that's clearly understood.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, before we continue, I want to deal with two issues, if you permit me. It won't be short. It relates to the line of questioning and where it started. The first is a number of the questions that are now being asked deals with theme 2. You know we've addressed you on that. I'm not going to...
The questions, as I understand it, are relevant in phase 1 because the contention being put up, whether it's correct or not is another matter. The contention being put up by the LRC is based upon the article which the witness wrote, which was quoted at the very beginning, where he said the turmoil in the mining industry is caused through housing and so forth. And he's trying to establish, with what degree of success, I don't know, we'll see in due course, that there is a direct link between problems in relation to housing and the non-provision of housing and the turmoil, in other words, the unrest which culminated in the 44 deaths. That, as I understand it, is the basis of the questioning. That's why I've allowed it. They did ask for a number of other topics on relating in a wider sense with the SLP and so forth, which I disallowed. And I made it quite clear to the representatives of the LRC that I was not prepared to allow them to venture into that area. But the area they're busy with now is a direct link between what happened or didn't happen and the actual deaths. That is phase 1.
You didn't allow me to finish my sentence.
Yes, forgive me, I will now allow you.
The point I'm making is to the extent that it might go over into areas, one shouldn't, and I'm not going to raise my voice all the time, one shouldn't see that there's any concession on our part that should go into. We'll deal with it separately in accordance with the letter we sent to you. And
you're entitled to make your position plain, and you've done so.
The second point I want to raise, and perhaps I should have raised it earlier, it occurs to me now, the line of cross-examination which my learned friend is busy with now, comments really at page 218C of the LRC bundle. Sorry, not 218C, 218B. Where there was a reference to the number of houses built, a target in 2009 of 3, and the actual achievement of 3. In fact, it's the previous page, Mr. Chairman. The table in 15.1.
Then it's amplified in the text on 218.
But the point I want to make, and I was going to deal with this in re-examination, but it...
Examination, this isn't your witness.
In cross-examination, you're right. I was going to deal with it in cross-examination, but I think I need to make a point now because one can go in the line that has been followed subsequently. If you turn to the next page, the context of the 3 houses built referred to is fully explained. There were 3 show houses waiting for an uptake which wasn't taken on. The manner in which it was presented to the witnesses, having regard to the original target, they built 3 houses and they stopped at 3 houses, and that whole context is lost, Mr. Chairman.
That surely is a question for you to raise and deal with in cross-examination when you get your turn. I don't think there's anything improper about the questions. But anyway, your comments are noted. Shall we proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairperson. Chairperson, this side.
Yes, Mr. Paul.
Yeah.
You're going to get a chance to cross-examine tomorrow.
Yeah, so I understand, Chairperson. But if you wanted to give it to me now, Chairperson. No, Chairperson, on a serious note, Chairperson, I think this might be an opportune moment, given so that we only have one interruption of my learned friend, Mr. Ngaitobi's cross-examination, to raise the issue which arises from the exchange you've just had with Mr. Bam, which suggests that he must raise certain things when he cross-examines. To raise the fact up front that my instructions are that we are going to object very strenuously to the idea of Lonmin cross-examining this witness. And it might as well, so that maybe it can be dealt with.
Let me deal with it now. We had the point long ago when the commission started, when there was what I described as friendly cross-examination by, say, the families of a witness called by the injured and arrested parties, or vice versa. The families didn't really call witnesses, but it arose in the context, you'll remember, of witnesses called by you for the injured and arrested parties being cross-examined by representatives of the families, and it amounted to what I call friendly cross-examination. And the question arose whether that kind of cross-examination is allowed. And I drew attention to the fact that it was decided as long ago as the early 1950s in the Milne Early case that friendly cross-examination of that kind can be allowed, but the answers obtained in that fashion have very little value. And I gave a ruling to that effect at the time, and that ruling stands. It applies here as well. Now we've got that out of the way.
Well, Chairperson, if you may allow me to finish my point so that you can make a ruling informed by what I'm going to say. I'm acutely aware of your previous ruling made in Rustenburg along the lines that you have explained. It's my humble submission that that situation differs markedly to the current situation. Here we have a witness who says to you that he gave all his involvement in this matter was in his capacity as a director of Loanmen. He has just said that this morning when he was asked by his own counsel. And the evidence obviously suggests that as well. And on what basis then can the company in respect of which he was acting as a director in a fiduciary capacity be allowed to cross-examine him, friendly or unfriendly? I mean, that is just an incestuous situation.
You've given us warning of the point you're going to raise with Mr. Bam wishes to cross-examine. You also have a full taste of the attitude that I adopted previously, so you will be able to deal with it fully in the light of what I put to you when the question arises. Let's not waste time now. Let's carry on with the cross-examination.
No, Chairperson. Yes, I understand. Let me just explain why I'm raising it now, Chairperson.
But you're raising an objection that you're going to raise tomorrow. So let's raise it tomorrow. You've indicated what your stance is. I'm afraid you're wasting time, Mr. Mpofu. I think we must carry on.
Chairperson, if you listen to me, please, then it will be clear who's wasting time now. I'm saying the reason...
I'm sure it will be, but please
yes, the reason that I'm raising this now...
Blood on his hands.
Yeah.
Will you please leave the room?
Blood on his hands.
Will you please leave the room immediately?
Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands!
The commission will adjourn.
Blood on his hands! 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 Blood on his hands!
Blood on his hands.
Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands! Blood on his hands!
Buffalo! 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 Buffalo!
Buffalo!
Buffalo! Buffalo!
address some remarks to those people who were responsible for the interruption which we've just endured. I hope it's being interpreted to them. It's important for this Commission to get to the truth of what happened at Marikana over the period from the 9th to the 16th of August 2012. It's important for us to find out not only what happened, but why it happened, and whose conduct contributed to what happened. It's important that this witness give his evidence in chief, which he's done, that we hear it, which we've done. It's also important that he be cross-examined so that we can assess the accuracy or otherwise of the evidence he gives. Those who are interrupting the proceedings are in fact depriving us of the full opportunity to hear that cross-examination. We have limited time in the Commission. The witness is available for 2 days only. Those interrupting the proceedings are in fact impairing the work of the Commission by preventing us from having the witness fully cross-examined. I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I'm going to give those concerned one more chance to behave themselves. If there are further interruptions, I will not hesitate to clear the chamber, and those who want to hear the evidence can do so at the overflow room, the other side of the passage, without being able to come into the chamber and waste our time and disrupt the proceedings. This is serious misconduct which cannot be tolerated in any civilized society, and no commission of this kind can function in the face of misbehavior of this kind. But as I've said, I'm prepared to overlook it now. I'm not going to, as I was originally intending to do, to clear the chamber now and say those who want to hear what's happening can do so across the passage. I'll give them one more chance. But please be absolutely clear in your minds. If you do this kind of thing again, the consequences which I've spelled out will follow. You're still under oath, Mr. Ramaphosa. You're still cross-examining. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Mpofu. You're still addressing me.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I was, when you were making the address, I was talking to Mr. Bam in the hope that in the interest of time, him and I could find each other. I suggest, Chairperson, that you give me some time. During the lunch hour, I'll speak to Mr. Bam, and if we find each other.
So I'd appreciate that.
Thank you,
that sounds, if I may say so, a very sensible suggestion, which reflects credit on both of you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
I also want to thank you. I understand you were responsible for calming the people who are misbehaving and interrupting the proceedings.
Thank you, Chairperson.
And I appreciate your intervention.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Please proceed with the cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the assistance with the situation. Deputy President, I was still exploring the issue of the financial constraints which was put forward to you at the Transformation Committee.
Yes.
And I had now come to the point where I was suggesting to you that if it has any relevance, it is between 2008 and 2009. Now, you've mentioned two other reasons that were given to you. The second reason is the issue of availability of land.
There was one point I thought you were going to make. I think it should be made now. At least you're going to make it later, in which case I don't want to interrupt you. It's the question of the effect on the available housing stock of the converting of hostels. Right, if you're going to deal with that, then I won't ask questions about it. But it seemed to me you were on the point of asking questions about that. You dealt with housing, you then came on to hostel conversion. If you're not going to deal with that question, I'll ask the question. Otherwise, it stands over for you to ask.
We may be approaching it from different ends, Mr. Chairman, so I wouldn't constrain you from asking the question.
Mr. Ramaphosa, were you ever informed what the effect on the available housing stock would be of the conversion of a hostel?
I don't quite understand,
Let me explain.
Mr. Chairman.
At the beginning of the commission,
Yes.
we had an inspection in Loco. We were taken to see one of the existing hostels.
Yes.
And then we were taken to see a converted hostel.
Yes.
Now, what we saw was this. In some cases, there was what amounted to a single room I'm talking about in a hostel,
Yes.
which is occupied by 8 people. And then there was a larger room which was occupied by 16 people,
Yes.
16 minors. When we were shown the converted hostels, what had happened was the room which had previously accommodated 8 people was now a single room for 1 person.
Yes.
The rooms which had accommodated 16 people appeared now to be units for 2 people, generally a minor and his wife or partner.
Yes.
So the impression that we got was that the conversion of a hostel effectively reduced the available housing stock by 87.5%.
Indeed.
So it's not just appropriate to convert hostels and say, well, we've done what we had to do. You had to build houses as well,
Yes.
to make up for the loss of housing stock caused by the conversion of the hostel.
Indeed.
Were you aware of that?
Yes, and that is
Was my impression correct?
your question was correct. I now understand it more fully.
Yes.
That is where the real challenge came in, that the mining companies giving pressure to doing away with this ravages of the migrant labor system where people are accommodated in collective accommodation, that as you converted them, then it meant that you needed to have a commensurate number of housing or houses to accommodate those that you were displacing from the hostel. So your percentage or your figure is correct, that it would have given rise to about 87% of shortage then of houses. So that was where the real challenge was.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. In fact, I might as well follow up on this point. Mr. Deputy President, what we now know is there was a target of 5,500 houses,
Yes.
3 of which Mr. Baum says there were show houses, the 3 that were built. Let's stay with show houses. 3 show houses were built. There was a target of 124 hostels to be converted.
Yes.
Only 60 were converted. 68 were still to be converted.
Indeed.
Now, it is so clear that if you look at what you said in 2011 about what the responsibilities of mining companies were, this was a complete failure on the part of Lonmin. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't classify it as a complete failure. I would say they underachieved,
Yes.
and more work needed to be done.
So let's stay with the language of underachievement. When you sat as chairperson of the Transformation Committee, and one of your key responsibilities was to ensure optimum achievement for the 2 years, why did you not raise this concern?
The concern was raised in the committee meetings.
Yes.
Indeed, it was raised, and the reasons for that were given and were put forward. And in those committee meetings, we would have wanted to see better performance going forward.
Yes. But it was clearly not raised with the sense of urgency that you articulated in 2011.
Well, I would say that urgency would have been a question that one would have dealt with, because it's relative.
Yes.
And one would have wanted things to be done as quickly as possible, but given whatever constraints they had, they would have given explanation for that.
But I mean, wouldn't you describe an achievement of 3 show houses against 5,500 as a failure?
Well, now that Mr. Baum has explained what those show houses were, I mean, there were show houses that were meant to, as I understand it now, to exhibit to the would-be, if you like, takers, that these are the houses that we could build, and one needs then to interrogate why there was no follow-up in terms of building more houses. Was it because people did not take them up, or was it because there were other reasons?
All right. Now, one of the reasons is availability of land that was given to you.
Yes?
Now, just want to refer you to some of the pages here which explain the story around availability of land. At page 151, which is the 2008 SLP,
Yes.
under paragraph 15.5, review of commitments made in respect of housing and hostel accommodation. the third bullet point says partial proclamation has been obtained for 800 stands, which will only have water connections, and Eskom power will only be available in 2010. And then it says building activities can, however, begin.
Yes.
So here, by 2008, Lonmin could start the construction of at least 800 houses. You see that?
I have seen it, yes.
Yes. And the following year, in 2009, which is at page 218B, we see the same reference being made under paragraph 15.3. Can you see that?
Yes, indeed.
And the second and third bullet point, the second bullet point says the 800 stands at Marikana Extension 2 have been proclaimed. Can you see that?
Yes.
The following bullet point, an additional 1,500 stands have been approved by Council at Marikana Extension 5.
Yes.
So by this stage, we at least have 2,300 stands that have been approved and proclaimed by the Council.
To the witness, you should put to him what appears further down on the page, giving an explanation. Whether it's an adequate explanation is a matter I don't think we have to need to explore with him, but explaining under the heading action plans going forward why the commencement of the buildings had not happened and when it was going to happen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to finalize the point about availability of land as an excuse. What I'm trying to put to you, Mr. Deputy President, is that at least by 2009, there were 2,300 stands available on which construction could begin.
Yes.
So the excuse given to you in 2010 about availability of land is an invalid excuse.
Well, clearly, I mean, it falls under the realms of underperformance, underachievement, because clearly, as set out here, the approval for the stands were obtained and they were proclaimed, and then the work did not get underway.
Yes. Now, the plans then that are highlighted at action plans going forward are as follows. 3 show houses will be shown to all interested employees, whereby details pertaining to the houses, size, cost, and information pertaining to financing and application will be provided. Once the interested employees deliver guarantees of financing, we will commence the building of the houses and project manage such. And then it talks about the initial funding to start the housing development will be taken from the funds available from the Marikana Housing Development Company. And then it continues. Now, it seems that all of this was then put conditional upon these employees, very same employees for whom this housing benefit should have benefited, that they must now guarantee finance. Did you accept this? Did you agree with this?
Provide guarantees. I take it they weren't going to guarantee it themselves.
Yes,
they were going to obtain guarantees from financial institutions of some kind.
Yes, indeed. But it looks like what happened, Mr. Deputy President, is that Lonmin then put the onus back on the employees to provide guarantees of finance.
Yes.
The question is, were you aware of that? When you got this explanation you told us about, when you took over, when you became a director and took over the Transformation Committee, and you were given explanations as to why there'd been this underachievement, as you call it, were you given that full explanation, which has now been explained to you by
the explanation was given, and I must say, where I had reservations was on the lack of provision for rental stock, because all this was for, Mr. Chairman, purchasing these houses, and workers then had to interact with financial institutions and guarantees. And at that level, I did raise that there needs to be another option which needs to be clearly investigated for rental housing, so that workers could then have an opportunity to rent rather than to purchase, which would have gone a long way in addressing this problem, because they would have used in part their living out allowance which they were getting, and part of it would then have gone to renting these houses, and the rental would have gone to help to finance the building of those houses.
Yes. All right. Now, I just want to then deal with the issue of the living out allowance. Now, in 2011, Lonmin decided to discontinue the housing project and replace it with giving employees a living out allowance of 1,800 rands per employee who qualified. Do you remember that?
Oh, which year was that?
2011.
Yes.
Yes. Now, was this discussed at the level of the Transformation Committee?
Various schemes were put forward to the Transformation Committee in relation to addressing the housing problem.
Yes. But the issue of replacing tangible houses with a living out allowance of 1,800 per employee who qualifies, was that discussed and approved by your committee?
I would not remember the specific details. The real challenge was workers were being paid a living out allowance. And as they were being paid out a living out allowance, houses had to be built. And the scheme that was on the table was that those same workers would need to buy those houses through a financing mechanism that had been put in place. So in the end, what they would have to do is to utilize that living out allowance for purposes of buying the houses.
Yes.
So in the end, it was not like giving out the houses free as well as the living out allowance. So a worker would have had to opt for either participating in the housing scheme, which is to buy, or saying, all I want to do is to stay with a living out allowance. And the other option that was put forward is the houses should be built and workers should have an option to rent those houses so that they don't have an additional burden of purchasing the house.
Yes, I just want to talk about the living out allowance. Was this an item discussed that we will now discontinue the construction, give the workers a living out allowance?
I don't remember the details.
Yes. But when you gave your
Sorry,
evidence...
before you go on, may I ask a question? I ask it because I have an impression that it may be erroneous. The impression I get is that living out allowances were not something confined to London, and not even confined to the platinum mining industry. Perhaps the witness can tell us whether that's correct.
That is correct. When many of the mines started becoming alive to the inhumane conditions of accommodating workers in the hostels, the option that they then had was to pay workers a living out allowance, and because they were incurring a cost anyway in accommodating them in the hostel, so a living out allowance then became the norm in a number of mines. So it was not only Lonmin.
But my understanding it wasn't only platinum, am I correct?
It is actually right across the industry right now.
Yes, the question you were asked by counsel was based upon an assertion that Lonmin introduced living out allowances in 2011. And I understood you to agree with that.
Yes.
Was that when this idea of giving living out allowances became general throughout the industry, or had it happened with certain other areas in the mining industry before 2011?
Mr. Chairman, it would have happened in a number of other companies a lot earlier than just 2011.
Yes, but your evidence in chief on the issue of the living out allowance, this is one of the aspects that you were quite critical about, because what happens in practice, workers take the living out allowance and they go back to the squatters where they're living.
Yes.
And the same actually happened at Lonmin.
Yes.
There are no houses built, there are no hostels converted. Not no hostels, but very few hostels are converted.
Yes.
People are getting cash, and what they do with it, they go back to the informal settlements.
Yes.
Now, these informal settlements, in your article of 2011, this is what you said about why this is critical that companies must attend to.
Perhaps we could have the article back again on the screen.
324.
Is it 324 of your bundle?
324.
Before, for the benefit of
Yes.
those who have stayed in the chamber to listen to the evidence, so they can see it on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Which paragraph are you referring to?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th paragraph from the top. And the 8th paragraph. So this is what you said, Mr. Deputy President. Employers could not merely...
Sorry, is this the paragraph? The 7th paragraph, I think, begins, if the business of mining depends. Is that right?
Yeah, no, the paragraph thereafter, Mr. Chairman. The following paragraph. Employers could not... Yes. Employers could not merely confine their concerns to working conditions and needed to assume far greater responsibility for the conditions under which workers lived. Then you continue. Workers living close to work, in water-served and electricity-regulated dwellings, and who were able to afford adequate nutrition and had vastly improved family lives, were likely to be more productive. They were also likely to remain with the mine for longer, improving skill retention and increasing stability. Those were your words in 2011.
Yes.
You had your responsibilities as the chairperson of the Transformation Committee to make sure that these things actually happen.
Yes.
What do you say to the criticism that you also did not, I think your words were underachieved. You also underachieved in that respect.
Yes. Those are my words. They remain my words. I'm clear about how one can deal with the ravages of the migrant labor system, and that companies need to have a responsibility for the living conditions of their workers. That I'm clear about. And on the Transformation Committee, one is not the only person who is a member. You are a member with many others, and as a non-executive director and in a subcommittee of the board, you are largely reliant on the executive managers, executive management, to implement decisions to make sure that things happen. And in this case, as I have said, there was clear underachievement.
So you were let down by the management?
Yes, I am not happy with this part of the mining industry. I've said so many times myself. This is not a happy area where the mining industry can be proud of its achievement.
Can I ask you about something else, which is something that appears in your statement in a descriptive fashion, where you are describing the way in which you acquired your shareholding at Lonmin?
Yes.
Where you mentioned...
What is the relevance of that to our terms of reference? I know there have been attempts by people to raise that issue, and I must confess I'm unable to understand how that issue, I understand it's an issue that some people feel strongly about. I'm not sure it's an issue that helps us at all to answer the terms of reference that have been given to us. And I'm not sure it's covered by the topic that I allowed you to cross-examine on.
I'll not pursue the issue any further, Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Those are the questions.
Thank you. The next party to cross-examine will be AMCU. Mr. Gotch, do you want to use the 5 minutes we have before lunch, or you want us to take an early lunch?
Chair, I'm cross-examining
So,
on behalf of
Ms. Bond.
AMCU.
Forgive me, I'm sorry.
But Chair, we have, with your permission, of course, we've changed the order. Mr. Nsebeza will be cross-examining, and then I will follow him.
I was told the order was changed and Mr. Bez was going to cross-examine before Mr. Mpofu. But I wasn't told about the other one. But anyway, thank you for telling me. Mr. Nsebeza, do you want to use 5 minutes before lunch, or would you like us to adjourn now and you can start 5 minutes earlier than you otherwise would have done with your cross-examination?
Mr. Chairman, if you could adjourn now so that we...
We'll adjourn now and we will resume then at... We haven't got any documents from you. Are you not going to refer to any?
I think all of the documents and or material that we're going to be referring to are exhibits already.
No, that's not enough. You've got to draw the witness's attention. When you consider how many...
I believe it was, Mr. Chairman.
There was, I see. All right. Thank you. I was going to resume at 1:45, but I resume at 1:20.
As the chair pleases.
Unless Mr. Mpofu and Mr. Bam think they require longer to reach an agreement. I'm in your hands, Mr. Mpofu and Mr. Bam.
No, Chairperson, I think we want 2 o'clock should be in order.
I was going to say 1:45, but...
Quarter to is...
All right, well, if you want 2 o'clock, you understand. We have to finish by the end of tomorrow.
1:45, Chairperson, given the other discussion about the shortness of time or the extension thereof.
All right, so you want me to start at 1:45?
Yes,
All right.
please, Chairperson.
Now,
and if I can be credited with that, 15 minutes, Chairperson.
No credits, no credits. I think it might be helpful, Mr. Nsibeza, if you had a discussion with Mr. Unterhalter now, just after we adjourn, because I get the impression that they may not be entirely clear about what documents you're going to refer to. But anyway, that's a matter you and your colleague can deal with during the adjournment. 1:45, we reassemble.